So basically, this is a video with all the essays I made on Berserk. I also added timestamps, so feel free to skip to any chapter. Griffith from Berserk is one of the most complex and divisive characters in the world of manga. His journey throughout the series is marked by a profound mix of ambition, sacrifice, betrayal, and manipulation of destiny. Many readers find themselves conflicted about Griffith, both repulsed by his actions and fascinated by the depth of his character. This essay will explore the intricate nature of Griffith's decisions, especially how his dreams, background, and destiny intertwine, as well as the duality of good and evil that defines him. Griffith's dreams and ambitions. At the core of Griffith's character is his burning desire to achieve his dream, owning a kingdom. This goal drives him throughout the Golden Age arc, where his charisma and vision attract a loyal following, including Guts, the story's protagonist. His dream of a kingdom is not simply a desire for power, but a reflection of Griffith's deep-rooted need to rise above everyone and everything, stemming from his childhood experiences of seeing kingdoms and nobles as superior. Griffith's dream is intricately tied to his sense of self-worth and destiny. He believes he is fated for greatness and is willing to sacrifice anything or anyone to achieve it. However, this ambition is not without its darker side. Throughout the series, we see moments of doubt where Griffith questions whether his dream is worth the suffering and death it brings. These moments of introspection reveal the conflict between his outward persona, the White Hawk, a symbol of purity and leadership, and his inner turmoil and insecurity. Berserk brilliantly drew me into the story, so much so that I initially forgot about the events from the first episode. I had gotten so invested in Guts and the Band of the Hawk, hoping for a happy ending, that the Eclipse left me devastated. In hindsight, there were hints all along that Griffith would become a villain, but I was too caught up in rooting for their success to see it. One early moment where I started doubting Griffith's character was when he ordered Guts to assassinate the king's brother, leading to the death of an innocent child. Griffith showed no remorse, and later, during his famous speech to Princess Charlotte, he revealed that he didn't even consider his comrades to be true friends. This mindset, alongside his relentless ambition, signaled Griffith's darker nature. The Eclipse, a turning point. For most readers, Griffith's actions during the Eclipse event represent the pinnacle of his betrayal and the embodiment of his evil. In this cataclysmic moment, Griffith sacrifices the Band of the Hawk, including many of his loyal companions, to become Femto, a member of the God Hand. The act is so horrifying that it becomes the primary reason why many despise Griffith. He betrays his closest allies, including Guts and Casca, in exchange for power, leading to the infamous and brutal assault on Casca, which marks the darkest moment in his character arc. While the Eclipse is a defining moment, it is not the only one that shapes Griffith's complexity. His decision to sacrifice the Band of the Hawk is fueled not just by ambition, but also by despair and personal humiliation. Before the Eclipse, Griffith's capture, torture, and physical destruction left him a broken man, unable to achieve his dreams through ordinary means. The Eclipse was his way of reclaiming what he believed was his destiny, but at an immense moral cost. Good and evil, a matter of perspective. Understanding Griffith requires a deep examination of the dualities that make up his character. On one hand, Griffith can be seen as a hero by those who live in his kingdom, Falconia, a utopia he establishes after the downfall of the Kashan Empire. For the people of Falconia, Griffith is a savior, a bringer of peace and stability in a world plagued by chaos and darkness. From their perspective, the good Griffith brings far outweighs the evil he has done. However, for those who witnessed Griffith's betrayal, Guts, Casca, and the surviving members of the Band of the Hawk, his actions are nothing short of monstrous. From their point of view, Griffith is a man who sacrificed his friends and allies for his personal gain, and the violence and trauma he inflicted upon them cannot be forgiven. This split in perception is central to the character of Griffith. He is both savior and villain, a figure whose actions can be interpreted as both good and evil depending on the observer's perspective. The role of destiny. A key element in Griffith's character is the concept of destiny. In Berserk, destiny plays a significant role in the lives of both Griffith and Guts, but in different ways. Griffith is portrayed as someone chosen by fate to ascend to greatness. His every action, including his most heinous ones, seems guided by an unseen force, the idea of evil, that shapes the world according to his desires. In this sense, Griffith's rise to power appears inevitable, as though he were merely following a script written by destiny. However, what makes Griffith particularly fascinating is that he is not simply a pawn of destiny, he becomes its master. As Femto, Griffith has the power to bend destiny to his will, achieving whatever he desires. This raises important questions about free will and responsibility. Is Griffith fully accountable for his actions if he is merely following a path laid out for him by fate? Or is he complicit in the evils he commits because he actively chooses to fulfill his destiny, regardless of the consequences? In contrast, Guts is someone who constantly struggles against destiny. Unlike Griffith, Guts fights to forge his own path, even if it means going against the forces that seek to control him. This contrast between Griffith, who embraces his destiny, and Guts, who rebels against it, forms the central conflict of Berserk. Griffith's downfall. While Griffith's control over destiny makes him seem invincible, there are hints throughout the series that his downfall may be tied to his emotions and his desire for something more. As the god hands Femto, Griffith no longer feels human emotions, yet there is a part of him, the Moonlight Child, that represents his lingering connection to humanity. This child, who appears sporadically in the series, is a manifestation of Griffith's subconscious desire for a normal life, and may be the key to his undoing. The tension between Griffith's godlike status and his lingering humanity suggests that his eventual downfall may come not from an external force, but from within. His desire to return to a more human existence could lead him to relinquish his power, or it may cause him to make a fatal mistake. In the end, Griffith's greatest strength, his ability to control destiny, may also be his greatest weakness, as his unresolved emotions threaten to unravel the empire he has built. Griffith's character in Berserk is a testament to the complexity of human ambition, destiny, and morality. He is both an inspiring and terrifying figure, embodying the extremes of good and evil, heroism and villainy. His journey raises profound questions about the nature of power, the cost of dreams, and the role of fate in shaping our lives. While his actions may never be fully forgiven or understood, Griffith remains one of the most compelling characters in manga history. Griffith's rape of Casca in Berserk is one of the most disturbing and emotional moments in the series, and understanding why it happened requires looking closely at Griffith's character and the events that led to this point. To put it simply, this act is about power, revenge, and the complete breakdown of who Griffith once was. Griffith starts off as a highly ambitious character. From the very beginning, his dream is to rise above his humble origins and become a king. To him, everyone around him, including Guts and Casca, are tools to achieve that goal. He's incredibly charismatic, strategic, and ruthless in pursuing his dream. But he's also human. Despite how cold and focused he appears, he does form bonds with the people in the Band of the Hawk, even though he views them as means to an end. This is where his connection with Guts becomes important. For Griffith, Guts was not just a soldier under his command. He was someone Griffith admired, maybe even loved in his own way. Guts, however, didn't see things the same way. Over time, Guts began to see Griffith's true nature and wanted to pursue his own path, separate from Griffith's dream. When Guts decides to leave, it's a huge blow to Griffith's pride. He feels betrayed and hurt in a way he's never experienced before. For someone like Griffith, whose entire life is about control and achieving his dream. Losing Guts feels like losing a piece of himself. After Guts leaves, Griffith makes a reckless decision to sleep with Princess Charlotte, which leads to his imprisonment and torture. This is where things really start to fall apart for him. Once a proud and powerful figure, Griffith is now a broken man, physically and mentally destroyed. His body is mutilated, and he's lost all control over his future. The person who once had everything going his way is now completely powerless, humiliated, and stripped of his dream. When Griffith is finally rescued by Guts and the others, he's no longer the same person. He sees his broken body and realizes that his dream is no longer possible. He'll never be the same, and this realization crushes him. All the power, control, and dignity he once had are gone, and he's left feeling helpless and angry. During the eclipse, Griffith is offered a choice. He can either remain in his broken state, or he can sacrifice his friends and become one of the God Hand, gaining godlike power in return. At this point, Griffith's mind is consumed by the desire to reclaim his dream. The idea of remaining powerless and broken is unbearable to him, so he chooses to sacrifice the Band of the Hawk. In doing so, he sheds his humanity and transforms into Femto, a being that no longer cares about the lives or feelings of those he once led. Now, we come to the act of rape. Griffith, as Femto, rapes Casca in front of Guts. To understand why he does this, we need to look at three things: power, revenge, and attachment. First, Griffith's entire journey has been about gaining power, and after losing it during his imprisonment, he's desperate to assert his dominance again. Raping Casca is a twisted way for him to feel in control, to prove that he's not weak or powerless anymore. It's a sick demonstration of his newfound strength as Femto. Second, this act is also about revenge. Guts, whether he realized it or not, was deeply important to Griffith. When Guts left, it triggered Griffith's downfall, leading to his capture and torture. By raping Casca, Griffith is striking back at Guts in the most personal and painful way possible. He knows how much Casca means to Guts, and by violating her, he's inflicting maximum emotional damage. It's not just about hurting Casca, it's about breaking Guts. Finally, by the time Griffith becomes Femto, he's completely detached from his humanity. He no longer sees people as individuals with their own worth. To him, Casca is just a piece of his past, a part of the life he's left behind. In this monstrous form, Griffith has no empathy or moral compass. He's lost all sense of the relationships that once mattered to him. This lack of feeling allows him to commit such a horrifying act without remorse. What makes this moment even more tragic is that Casca was once someone who admired and cared for Griffith. She devoted herself to him, believing in his dream just as much as anyone else in the Band of the Hawk. But to Griffith, in that moment, she's nothing more than an object he can use to hurt Guts and assert his dominance. It's a heartbreaking betrayal of both Casca and Guts, and it marks the final point of Griffith's fall from grace. In the end, Griffith's rape of Casca is about more than just physical violence. It's the culmination of his psychological breakdown, his need to reclaim control, and his complete detachment from the people he once led. It's a deeply personal act of revenge against Guts, and a cruel demonstration of his transformation into something inhuman. While nothing can justify what Griffith did, understanding the reasons behind his actions sheds light on how far he has fallen from the man he once was, and how his ambition ultimately destroyed not only himself, but everyone around him.
Casca's arc in Berserk stands as one of the most devastating character narratives in manga history. known for the raw emotional power and trauma it conveys. What begins as a tale of a seemingly abrasive, unlikable woman evolves into one of the most gut-wrenching and tragic stories in fiction. Her development from a hardened soldier to a broken woman, stripped of her self-worth and identity, is both heartbreaking and complex, making her one of the most compelling figures in Kentaro Miura's dark epic. The intensity of her character arc speaks not only to the dangers of unrequited infatuation and emotional dependency, but also to the slow and fragile process of self-discovery and how easily it can be shattered. Initially, Casca is portrayed as cold and even detestable. Her fierce loyalty to Griffith, the leader of the Band of the Hawk, blinds her to many of his flaws, causing her to lash out at others, particularly Guts, who quickly gains Griffith's favor. Casca's harshness is not born out of inherent malice, but rather from her deep-seated insecurities and her struggle to prove her worth as a soldier in a world where being a woman made her success nearly impossible. Her aggression is a defense mechanism, one that she uses to shield herself from the vulnerability she feels in her devotion to Griffith. To her, he is more than a leader. He is her savior, the person who gave her a purpose and a life beyond the pitiable existence she once knew. Yet, this dependence on Griffith for her sense of self-worth is ultimately her downfall. What makes Casca's eventual fate during the eclipse so devastating is the journey she undertakes before reaching that moment. Through her interactions with Guts, Casca begins to unravel the layers of her emotional shell. When the two are forced to work together, her initial hostility toward him gradually shifts to a deeper understanding and mutual respect. This connection allows her to begin seeing herself through Guts' eyes rather than Griffith's, a crucial step in her path to personal growth. Guts, unlike Griffith, values Casca not as a tool or a symbol, but as a person. In him, she finds someone who respects her for her strengths and supports her through her weaknesses, and in turn, she begins to build a foundation of self-respect that had long been absent from her life. However, this period of personal growth is short-lived. The tragedy of Casca's character lies in the brutal reversal of this hard-won development. After finally finding a sense of self-worth, everything is ripped away from her during the eclipse. The horrific events of that fateful day, in which Griffith sacrifices his comrades and Casca is raped in front of Guts, shatter her mentally and emotionally. The rape scene is not only shocking for its graphic brutality, but for the psychological devastation it inflicts on Casca. In that single act, all the progress she had made in finding her identity and self-worth is obliterated. She becomes a shell of her former self, lost in a mental fog where the trauma of that day haunts her at every turn. This tragic fall from personal growth to complete mental destruction resonates deeply with readers. Casca's story is a powerful commentary on how fragile self-worth can be, especially when it is tied to the approval of others. Her devotion to Griffith, who never reciprocates her feelings in any meaningful way, leaves her vulnerable and ultimately exploited. Casca's need for validation from someone who values ambition over personal connection makes her tragic downfall all the more inevitable. She could never become the independent person Griffith would respect because she tied her self-worth so completely to his approval. What is even more tragic is that Casca's journey mirrors the experiences of many who struggle with self-esteem and self-worth. Her early dependence on Griffith, her jealousy of Guts, and her slow realization that she could be more than just a follower are all parts of a deeply human struggle. Many readers see in Casca a reflection of their own experiences with unrequited love, emotional dependence, and the quest for validation. Her tragic fall, while fantastical in its brutality, taps into real fears: the fear of losing oneself to the opinions and expectations of others, and the fear that all the progress made in finding one's identity can be taken away in an instant. The intimate bond between Casca and Guts is perhaps the most significant relationship in her life, offering her a glimpse of what it means to be valued for who she is, not for what she can do for someone else. Their shared trauma, both victims of sexual violence, fosters a deep mutual understanding that transcends typical romantic connections. In Guts, Casca finds someone who not only sees her as an equal, but respects her for the person she is, not as an extension of someone else's dream. The The trust and vulnerability that develop between them signify the growth she desperately needed, offering a glimpse of a life where she could define herself by her own terms rather than through Griffith's eyes. However, the weight of her trauma casts a long shadow over this growth. The mental and emotional collapse she suffers following the eclipse is a gutting reminder that progress in self-discovery is often delicate and easily destroyed by external forces. For Casca, the trauma of the eclipse was not just an assault on her body, but a complete destruction of the person she was becoming. For readers of Berserk, the fate of Casca remains a central concern. Will she ever regain her sense of self? Will she ever heal from the trauma that shattered her mind? The hope that Casca might one day be restored to the person she was becoming is not just a desire for a happy ending, but a reflection of the human need for closure and healing. Her journey is one that resonates deeply because it touches on universal themes of self-worth, identity, and the struggle to overcome trauma. Casca's story in Berserk is not just one of the most devastating in manga history because of the horrors she endures, but because it is a poignant exploration of how difficult it can be to build self-respect, and how easily that respect can be lost. Through Casca, Kentaro Miura offers readers a deeply human and tragic figure, one whose struggle for identity and self-worth is as inspiring as it is heartbreaking. Berserk is perhaps one of the least family-friendly series to ever capture mainstream attention. Its dark and mature themes, including extreme violence and disturbing content, make it an unlikely candidate for delivering life lessons. However, despite its intense and often grim narrative, Berserk contains some of the most profound lessons about life, personal growth, and resilience. Lessons that every individual, especially younger audiences, can benefit from. Central to these lessons is the character of Guts, the Black Swordsman, who ironically emerges as one of the most compelling role models in manga. At first glance, the notion of Guts as a role model seems paradoxical. He is a character who has made massive mistakes and is driven by rage, hatred, and a desire for vengeance. Up until a certain point in the series, it is difficult to categorize Guts as a good man in any conventional sense. Yet, it is precisely these flaws, rather than in spite of them, that make Guts a powerful role model. Like many of us, Guts has made mistakes, massive ones, but what sets him apart is his ability to reflect on his actions, take responsibility, and strive to be better, no matter how difficult the journey may be. One of the most significant aspects of Guts' character is his honest self-awareness. Unlike many characters in fiction who find redemption in a single, transformative moment, Guts' journey is slow, painful, and filled with self-loathing. He regrets the things he has done, and as the story progresses, he comes to a critical realization. His choices are his own. He has no one to blame for his actions but himself. This realization doesn't come easily, nor does it immediately lead to a change in behavior. However, it plants the seed for growth, leading Guts to make decisions that ultimately steer him towards a path of redemption. When Guts assaults Casca, he does not blame circumstances or external forces but holds himself accountable. This moment of self-awareness leads him to do something he deeply resents: traveling with others. The lesson here is clear. Though it is incredibly difficult, it is essential to reflect on one's actions, recognize one's faults, and strive to be better. This message is not unique to Berserk, but few series convey it with the same level of honesty and difficulty. The theme of controlling one's emotions, particularly rage, is another core lesson that Berserk imparts through Guts. During the Black Swordsman arc and the Lost Children chapters, Guts is consumed by anger and hatred. However, the series portrays this anger not as a source of strength, but as a destructive force. Guts' rage alienates him from others and drives a wedge between him and the people he cares about. Berserk contrasts sharply with other series that celebrate unbridled rage, especially when it stems from a desire for vengeance. Instead of glorifying Guts' fury, Berserk emphasizes the importance of controlling one's emotions. When Guts dons the Berserker armor, He isn't embracing his hatred but actively resisting it to protect those he cares about. The series teaches that while it is natural to feel anger, especially in the face of injustice, it is crucial to control these emotions rather than letting them control you. This distinction is challenging to grasp but is essential for leading a fulfilling life. Perhaps the most important lesson Berserk offers is the harsh reality of powerlessness. In life, there are times when no matter how hard you try or how much you grow, things simply won't go your way. This sense of powerlessness is a central theme in Berserk, represented by the concept of causality, the idea that one event sets off a chain reaction, leading to outcomes that are often beyond anyone's control. Guts' life is a testament to this. Everything good in his life has been ripped away from him time and again for reasons entirely out of his control. However, instead of succumbing to despair or blaming the world for his misfortunes, Guts pushes back against this sense of powerlessness. Unlike many of the series' antagonists, who blame others for their circumstances and become monsters as a result, Guts takes responsibility for his actions and continues to fight, even when the odds are against him. This resilience in the face of adversity is what makes Guts a true role model. He embodies the idea that even when life is unfair, even when everything is against you, it is essential to keep fighting, to keep striving for something better. Guts teaches us to be defined not by what weighs us down, but by what we overcome. This is a lesson that many series aimed at younger audiences overlook or simplify, focusing instead on the idea that hard work and dedication will always lead to success. Berserk challenges this notion by acknowledging that sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you will fail. However, it also emphasizes that failure is not the end. What matters is how you respond to it. In conclusion, Berserk offers 3 core lessons through the character of Guts: the importance of self-reflection and accountability, the necessity of controlling one's emotions, and the resilience to keep fighting even when the world seems against you. These are complicated issues, filled with nuances that can be difficult to navigate. Yet, they are among the most important lessons for anyone, especially young adults, to learn. While Berserk may not be suitable for all audiences due to its mature content, the lessons it imparts through Guts are universal and timeless. Guts' journey from a vengeful, rage-filled warrior to a figure of resilience and self-awareness is one that resonates deeply, offering a powerful example of what it means to grow, to learn from one's mistakes, and to keep fighting, no matter what life throws your way.
Many of you are likely acquainted with Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most significant yet contentious philosophers of contemporary history. His controversial reputation is, in part, the result of how his ideas are frequently misrepresented in popular media. Numerous television shows and films allude to his philosophies, and anime is no exception. Regardless of whether it was a deliberate choice, the narrative of Berserk is deeply infused with Nietzschean themes. For example, in chapter 220, during a moment where Casca explores the astral realm, she recalls advice from her teacher, Flora. Should the power transcend the caster's control, there exists the danger of the caster being consumed. Remember, when you peer into the abyss stares back at you. This echoes one of Nietzsche's renowned quotes from Beyond Good and Evil. He who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will also gaze back into you. This concept of potentially becoming the very monster one battles resonates profoundly with Guts. Consumed by rage and resentment toward Griffith, he dedicates himself to tracking down and obliterating apostles in his quest for revenge, yet this only intensifies his hatred. If I were to find a metaphor for his struggle, it would be akin to exercising a muscle. His desire for destruction becomes more formidable the more he indulges it, much like a muscle develops with continued use. This internal conflict is epitomized by the Beast of Darkness, which grows stronger and more dominant as Guts nurtures his fury. However, if Guts allows anger to be his sole guide, he risks transforming into the monster he vehemently opposes. In his donning of the Berserker armor, Guts succumbs to his rage, becoming more beast than man. The Skull Knight and the Beast warn him that this unchecked anger may lead to total self-loss, potentially turning him into a monstrous being akin to Griffith, who sacrifices his humanity in pursuit of his ambitions. Griffith embodies many traits associated with Nietzsche's concept of the superior individual. He believes that humanity can be divided into two groups, the higher men and the herd. The higher man is characterized by a unifying life's project that endures beyond their existence. This aligns perfectly with Griffith's goal of establishing his own kingdom, an ambition that distinguishes him from the other members of the Band of the Hawk. As Judo observes in Chapter 16, Griffith presents both a seemingly naive demeanor and a chilling intensity, leaving others uncertain whether he is a child or an adult, a hero or a villain. The truth is, there is something inherently different about him that the ordinary person cannot quite grasp. Nietzsche suggests that the higher individual operates in solitude, unmarred by the praise or criticism of the herd. Griffith reflects this very idea when he asserts that any friend must be of equal stature, possessing their own dreams. He cannot associate himself with those who depend on another's vision, reinforcing Nietzsche's idea that higher individuals do not require the support of others for their existence. Guts acknowledges this theme while sitting with Casca, comparing the flames of campfires to the individual ambitions of the Hawks. However, he criticizes those who relinquish their personal aspirations to align with Griffith's greater dream, suggesting their reliance signifies weakness. This motif recurs in Chapter 169, titled Those Who Cling and Those Who Struggle, where Guts confronts Moscus, who tries to justify his violence in the name of protecting the innocents, but is ultimately revealed as one who merely prays and relies on the faith of others. This pattern of dependency is also evident in the character of Nina during the Conviction arc. Her journey reveals her envy and resentment towards her assertive friend, Luca, which she realizes stems from her desire to emulate Luca's strength and independence. Nietzsche viewed envy as a potential catalyst for self-discovery, enabling individuals to grasp their true desires, as Nina ultimately does. Nietzsche was vocally critical of religion, arguing that it provided false comfort to those too weak to fight for their true desires. He suggested that it breeds a slave morality, a framework where the virtues of the higher men are vilified by those unable to attain them. This dynamic is echoed in the Conviction arc, where the Catholic-like Holy See and the heretics represent differing yet fundamentally similar religious ideologies, ultimately leading to self-delusion and tragedy, regardless of their underlying beliefs. In the philosophical context, Nietzsche likened religion to a narcotic, much like alcohol, a means of escaping the harsh realities of life. He viewed the human urge to inflict pain as innate, suggesting that societal constraints lead us to internalize these feelings as guilt, rationalizing our suffering through doctrines of guilt and sin. This philosophy finds reflection in the beliefs and actions of characters in the Conviction arc, where individuals inflict pain upon themselves in line with their faith. Finally, Guts' evolution as a character encapsulates Nietzsche's concept of self-overcoming. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche articulates the need for individuals to surpass their limitations, a process that Guts embodies through his development. Initially, he represents the camel, dutifully carrying out his tasks without questioning their purpose. The pivotal moment occurs when he meets Griffith, prompting him to question his motivations and, ultimately, to evolve into the lion who asserts his will and seeks his path. Yet, to achieve true self-overcoming, Guts must confront the dragon of Thou Shalt, uncovering his genuine desires apart from societal expectations. Although Guts has not yet transcended to the final stage, referred to by Nietzsche as the child, it is a journey toward discovering true meaning and autonomy. The conclusion of Guts' story may very well lie in that realization. The chilling depiction of a tree adorned with the lifeless bodies of the hanged serves as the prologue to our tale. From one of these corpses, a baby named Guts miraculously emerges, defying the odds as he begins his life amidst decay and despair. Despite the bleakness surrounding him, Guts clings to life. His existence appears both impossible and absurd, and thus he takes his first step into the existential saga of Berserk. As fate would have it, a band of mercenaries arrives, and Guts finds himself adopted by Gambino and a troubled woman named Shizu. She had been devastated by a previous miscarriage and is rumored to have changed ever since, while her husband remains indifferent, absorbed in his own struggles. Even as Shizu succumbs to the plague, Gambino remains absent, leaving only Guts by her side. Years later, Guts is raised under the harsh and toxic influence of Gambino, who inflicts a scar on Guts' nose during a fit of rage after a spar. Despite Gambino's cruelty, he manages to win Guts over temporarily when he gives him healing ointment. However, on one fateful night, a man named Donovan enters Guts' tent and abuses him, claiming that Gambino had sold Guts for a night. In disbelief, Guts kills Donovan, only to later accept Gambino's feigned ignorance about the incident. This fragile trust shatters when Gambino is injured in battle and drunkenly stumbles into Guts' tent, lamenting that Guts is cursed and that he is responsible for Shizu's death, ultimately confessing to having sold him. In their chaos, Gambino accidentally causes his own death when Guts instinctively defends himself, leading Gambino's band to pursue Guts afterward. In fleeing atop a horse, Guts is shot down and falls from a cliff, where he is presumed dead. As he lies in a pool of water under the stars, a profound sense of loneliness envelops him, thrusting him into a world of adult independence. Guts never intended to kill Gambino. It was an act of instinct driven by the will to survive. As he traverses the vast canyon, he learns to defend himself again and again. This primal instinct becomes a defining trait of his existence. In that moment, Guts' life appears devoid of meaning. He has no family, no aspirations, yet his sword remains a lifeline. Despite the futility of his battles, this singular experience fortifies his mindset for the road ahead. Soon after, Guts emerges as a mercenary, catching the eye of Griffith through his fierce independence and reliance solely on himself and his weapon. After easily vanquishing a formidable enemy, Guts finds himself enlisted in Griffith's Band of the Hawk. Throughout the Golden Age arc, we witness Guts' internal monologues, where he grapples with the idea of working alongside a group once more. His longing for connection surfaces, and he tentatively opens up to the other members of the band. However, this newfound belonging is soon tested when he overhears Griffith discussing his ambitions. Guts realizes he cannot subordinate himself to another man's dreams, feeling the urge to forge his own path, a sentiment Griffith ironically appreciates, considering it a trait of true friendship. During his time with the Band of the Hawk, Guts encounters Casca, a woman infatuated with Griffith. Years prior, she was rescued from a nobleman's assault by Griffith, who became her savior. Initially, Guts and Casca's relationship is fraught with tension, both enduring one another for Griffith's sake. As jealousy brews within Casca, she confides in Guts about her feelings and ambitions, coming to terms with the reality that Griffith's aspirations may never align with her own. Eventually, Casca begins to develop feelings for Guts. In a pivotal moment, Guts leaves the band of the Hawk, shattering Griffith's sword in the process, a clear metaphor for the collapse of Griffith's dreams, which would lead to catastrophic events. However, Guts himself remains conflicted, reflecting upon his sword as an essential part of his identity. While he considers if it represents his aspirations, he ultimately concludes it is merely a tool for survival, an ever-present companion through his life. When Guts returns to find Casca has become the band of the Hawk's new leader, his homecoming is met with fury and sorrow. Casca, dedicated to the remnants of the band and shattered by Griffith's actions, despairs over the loss of everything that once mattered to her, culminating in an attempt to end her life. Guts intervenes, rescuing her, reminiscent of their earlier shared traumas. In the midst of rekindled feelings, Guts, haunted by memories of both Gambino's and Donovan's assaults, experiences a traumatic flashback. This moment compels him to confront his buried past, pouring out his regrets and guilt over Gambino's death. Here, Guts finally recognizes the burden of his unresolved trauma, a poignant realization that he is no longer constrained to bear it alone. Grateful for their shared bond, Casca no longer fears change, realizing her place beside Guts. In their intimacy, they find solace, yet Guts can't shake the haunting memories linked to his childhood. This poignant moment is a pinnacle of characterization in the manga, evoking a blend of sadness, warmth, and tragedy. However, the narrative takes a darker turn as the Golden Age culminates, leading to Guts' relentless quest for purpose after the devastation of his newfound connections. In the aftermath, Guts grapples with regret, haunted by the loss of Casca and the fallout of his friendship with Griffith, which dissolves amidst the chaos of the Eclipse. The world of Berserk descends into darkness as Guts battles post-traumatic stress that shapes his every move, overshadowed by the demons of his past and the emotional scars that burden him. Despite the bleakness, Guts and Casca symbolize the potential for change, hinting at the overarching theme of causality. Unlike the doomed characters reflected in their backstories, Guts is not irrevocably bound to their fates. This notion is reinforced by Flora, who assures that one's destiny is not cyclical, but rather a spiral, suggesting the possibility of transcending past mistakes. Following the eclipse, a glimmer of hope emerges with the being who saves Guts and Casca, representing a new chance at forging a path forward. It's this constant struggle and search for meaning that characterizes Guts' journey through the series. As Guts navigates the aftermath of the Golden Age arc, his struggles with connection and vulnerability highlight a significant character evolution. Though it may take time, there is hope that Guts can confront the drama imposed upon him and find peace within himself. This resolution would create a fitting conclusion to a tale marked by existentialism and trauma,